Good morning. It is great to see everyone. I enjoy being able to see people's faces here. As most of y'all know, Kelsey and I have been kind of struggling with COVID and just kind of some sickness and stuff around here. So any interaction we can get with other people is good. It's great to have. I love Kelsey. I'm very glad that I'm blessed to be able to spend time with her. But I know it's probably rough for her that I'm the only person that she can see every day. So being able to see other people, being able to worship with y'all is great, is a really, really good experience. And anytime I'm able to present some kind of message, I am always happy as well. I do need the ability to share my screen real quick so I can throw an image up here. So I don't know who I need to get that from. If I get that real quick, I can go ahead and pop my screen up on here. Wait just one moment. While I'm waiting on that, I did want to thank everybody for their prayers and concerns and checking up on Kelsey and I while we've been home and while Kelsey's had COVID. She's feeling much better. Things have been kind of a slow progression. So things are getting better in our household for sure. But we've had some days where we felt pretty crummy, where we felt pretty bad. And so having y'all check in on us, know that y'all are praying for us and seeing how we're doing means a whole lot, and it really helps. It really helps us to be able to heal up and to get better, knowing that y'all are checking on us and care about us. All right, so I think I'm able to share my screen now, so we'll go ahead and to get into this. Something I wanted to talk about today is I want to talk about the idea of holiness. So holiness is one of those things it's always been very interesting to me. It's a very pivotal part about who we are as Christians, but it's also something that's very kind of ethereal, and it's hard to grab onto, and it's hard to define, and it's hard to really to discuss, because a part of the idea of holiness, of sacredness, is this idea of separation, of division, of otherness, of something that's strange and foreign to us. And in fact, the word foreign is going to pop up in our text. We're going to be in 1 Peter chapter 1. But part of the hard part about understanding, holy, when it's wrapped up with words like division, separation, otherness, those are words that in our understanding, those are not normally positive terms, right? And then when we talk about division, a lot of what we're hearing about today is, political division, or it's division based on this, or it's division based on that. When we think about separation, death is one thing that pops into the forefront of my mind. It pops into the forefront of our minds when we have some kind of virus going around. When we think about otherness, we think about people who we're unwilling to be a part of, we're unwilling to socialize with, who we're unwilling to see as our brothers and sisters, as our fellow man in some cases. So all of these words, they're tied to holiness, and they're part of our kind of understanding of holiness, but they're also negative. They're also words that we don't really see positively. So I'm hoping that as we look at 1 Peter 1, as we kind of read through this text is going to move in a way that progresses very nicely, in my opinion. And hopefully that comes through as we read through this and we kind of better understand, how does holiness fit into especially what we're doing in this moment of communion? How does holiness help us to inform and better understand this moment, but also to better understand who we are as God's people? How do we take holiness into what we do? Again, holiness is something that, as this image would show here, I would think about, a guy with a long white beard, some guy reading the Talmud, reading some kind of ancient text. Sometimes there's even people over in the East who are talked about as Hindu holy men. Holy men is part of their title. There's these people in these long kind of flowy robes. They have these really big beards, and they have these old crinkled faces. They're people who are all about this kind of wisdom, and they're all about thoughts. And that's kind of what holiness evokes, in my mind at least, is this image of this person who appears to be holy. They're dressed in a holy way. Their appearance shows that they're holy. Maybe we even think about Moses, shining after he comes down from his discussion with God. Maybe that's what we think of when holiness comes to mind. We all have this image in our mind of what holiness is, though. And I feel like it's very tied to a kind of visual. kind of visual representation of it, if anything else. But let's go ahead and dig in here into 1 Peter chapter 1 and kind of see what Peter is saying about holiness. I'm going to start reading in verse 13. Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy, because I am holy. So first of all, what we are being called to be is we are called to be holy. We are called to prepare our minds for action. We are being called, you've got to be ready. Right, and a lot of this even evokes kind of that language of kind of the Exodus, okay? When the people took over when they took the Passover in Exodus, they were, you better have your bag in your hand, have your staff in your hand, put those sandals on, be ready to go. Okay, so this kind of makes the same kind of thing come to mind. Be ready for action, be self-controlled, right? It's hard to be ready for action. It's hard to be prepared for something if I'm kind of just being led by whatever the moment brings, right? If I'm all about living for myself, I'm all about living for this moment, how am I supposed to be prepared for something that I can't even see yet? Living moment to moment doesn't allow me to prepare for any kind of action. It doesn't allow me to prepare for anything, honestly. And we are to set our hope fully on the grace to be given to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. We are ready for this action for Christ to be revealed. And I love what it says in 14. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. We are called to be obedient. We are also called children. So this is a very familial kind of relationship. We have been drawn into the family of God. We've been called into this family of believers. We are to be obedient, and we are called to be obedient because we are no longer living in ignorance. We're no longer living in ignorance. We know who Jesus Christ is. We've been introduced to who Jesus Christ is, so we've been called to be holy, to cast off these things, to live ready for action, to live ready for Christ to be revealed. Verse 16 finally says, be holy because I am holy. So right here in just these first couple of verses, we're getting a little bit of a snapshot of what holiness is. Okay, holiness is being like Christ. 16 encapsulates that well when it says, be holy because I am holy. So therefore, well, if Christ is holy and I'm supposed to be holy, I should be like Christ. Now, I would write that out in a mathematic way, but I'm really bad at math, so I'm not going to be able to put any kind of equal signs or whatever on there. But I think we can all envision that being holy is like Christ is holy. We're supposed to be like Christ. We're supposed to be holy. Okay, that's basically what that is. So we are called to something higher. We are called to live for action. We're supposed to be self-controlled. Sober is what it says in other translations. We are called to be ready for something. I'm looking forward to something. I am looking for something to be coming. I am supposed to be ready for something to happen. Now, and I think when we think about separation, otherness, or division in this way, I think there's another way to think about separation. And right now, Kelsey and I have been separated from the outside world for the past, almost 10 days, close to 10 days, maybe 7 or 8. The separation that we're a part of is not a part of separation that's negative, right? Now, we don't enjoy it, but the purpose of this separation is safety, right? Kelsey and I are, in our bodies is this virus that can be very, very deadly to some people. So we are separated so that we don't cause any trouble for anyone else. We are separated so that we don't hurt anyone else. We're separated so that nobody else is harmed. All right. Another thing that came to mind is, I used to do a little bit of skateboarding when I was younger, when I was in my younger days. And one thing I always had to have with me when I was skateboarding is I always had to wear my helmet. Okay, I had a couple of nasty wrecks. I had a couple of nasty incidents where if I had not been wearing a helmet, I would have been in trouble. But what a helmet does is a helmet separates your head from the rest of the world. The helmet separates your head from the concrete, right? There's some kind of barrier. There's some kind of safety in there. And I think that's a little bit of this idea of holiness that's coming into play, especially in verse 14 there. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. So right now, as I kind of read this, I get this image of this kind of helmet forming around us. Okay, this armor, all right, as we read another text. As we get this shield of protection that's coming around us. So we've been called to this. We've been called to be holy. We've been called to be separate. But who are we separate from? Why am I being called to be separate? Why do I have to be the one who's separated out? Why am I the one who's different? Why am I the one who's strange? Verse 17, since you call on a Father who judges each man's work impartially, live your lives as strangers here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him. And so your faith and hope are in God. We are being called to live as strangers here in reverent fear. Why are we living as strangers? Well, because we have a Father who judges impartially. Now that seems a little bit confusing on its face, doesn't it? He's our Father. Okay, so we have this close relation to him, but he judges all impartially. I think there were times when I lived in my house, when I was a teenager, that I did things that if they were done by another kid, I think my dad would have come down a lot harder on them, or would have come down on them a lot differently. But because they were perpetrated by his own son, because they were mistakes I made, I think sometimes he went kind of easy on me. I think sometimes he showed a lot more grace than he might have showed to other people. But instead, we have a Father who judges impartially. We are called to this higher standard, even though the people around us are going to be seen by God in the same way, are going to be judged against this certain, are going to be measured in the same way we are going to be measured. But God is saying, I expect more of you. Live as strangers here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver and gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life before you, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. Why do we have to be different? Why do we have to be separate? Why do we have to feel like strangers, like foreigners in this world? Nobody likes to be different. Nobody likes to be strange. Nobody wants to feel foreign. Nobody wants to feel out of place. But foreign is not necessarily a bad thing here, is it? You see, he's saying we are to live foreign. Who are we to be foreign from? Well, it seems like we're supposed to be foreign. We're supposed to live differently than the people in our own family, the people who lived way back, okay? The people who I might have taken a lot of my example from. I'm supposed to live foreign. I'm supposed to live differently than them. I'm supposed to live separate from their way of life. But that's not a bad thing. That's not negative. I'm supposed to live that way because I have not been redeemed by silver or gold, but I have been redeemed by the blood of Christ. Why does he talk about silver and gold? Why does he talk about the blood of Christ? I think we all know, and I think we've all experienced, and especially so close to the holidays, right? Sometimes when you were a kid for Christmas, you may have gotten the thing that you asked for all year long. Oh man, I want to get that, whatever that thing is that's special to you. When you receive that thing that's special to you, that comes at a high price, you treat it differently, don't you? You treat it special. Okay, maybe you make sure that it always goes into its place. Okay, maybe you make sure to put that up. Maybe, a lot of teenagers for Christmas, they might get a cell phone or whatever, right? What's the first thing you do once you buy the cell phone, right? You got to put it in a case. You got to protect it. Okay. What's the first thing you do with the new car, right? If you get the new car goes in the garage, the old car goes outside, right? Whatever it is, we're all about protecting things. We're all about showing care and separation towards things to us that are very important. In the same way, we haven't been purchased with something perishable like silver and gold. Silver and gold can lose their value. Silver and gold are only given value by what comes in the moment, by what's important to us. But we've been bought. We've been saved. We've been purchased by something that can't change value, that will never change value, that will always be at the highest value possible. We've been purchased with this blood of Christ. We've been purchased with this blood of Christ from a lamb without blemish or defect. You can't be any more expensive than you were when you were bought with Christ's blood. And there's part of this in which, I ask, why me? Why is this me? Everyone here is going to be judged impartially. But I am purchased at this highest price. Why me? Because Christ wants us. Christ wants us to be a part of his family. He wants us to be his children. He wants us to be obedient. He wanted to pay for us with the most costly thing possible. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Christ didn't die for just anybody. Christ didn't just die to write a nice book. Christ didn't just die for the holy men, right? He didn't just die for the people who appear to be holy on the outside. He didn't just die for the people who, in my mind, seem like they've got a leg up on me. Instead of dying for the people who are already holy, he died for all and then said, I want you to become holy. I want you to be holy, holy. Holy in all that you do. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him. So your faith and hope are in God. We've been bought at the highest price possible. We've been shown a kind of love. We have been given a value and a worth that a lot of time we feel like doesn't fit us. I don't really know if I was worth that much, Jesus. And in a lot of ways, we aren't. But what God is doing is he is purchasing us at that high price, and he is saying, I want to invite you into holiness. Become holy. Be better. Be what I want you to be. So now we know what God is expecting from us. What is he asking us? And we see that he's invited us into that he's given us the ability to be something that's separate, not because it's bad or that it's worse, because he wants to give it special priority. He wants to keep it safe. He wants to keep us safe and protected from the things around us. He wants to keep us from ignorance. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to do that every day? What do I do differently now that I've been called into this kind of higher way of living, this higher life? Verse 22, now that you have purified yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love for your brothers, love one another deeply from the heart. For you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable. Again, we have been bought by something that is imperishable, that cannot change, cannot lose value, that cannot ever be undone. Through the living and enduring word of God. For all men are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord stands forever. And this is the word that was preached to you. He even goes on into chapter 2. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. We have been called into something. We are supposed to love one another. We are supposed to get rid of all of the malice, deceit, hypocrisy. We are supposed to cast off sin. We are supposed to get rid of it because we have been called towards the imperishable. We have been purchased with the imperishable so that we might hopefully not perish. I don't want to perish. And my physical body one day is going to perish. All right? That's one thing that sickness teaches you. All right? Is that even as we get sick, as our bodies start to fail us in different ways, as we start to have issues, we realize this body is perishable. This body is not going to last me forever. But there is a part of me that God has purchased. There's a part of me that is being renewed, that is being called towards something imperishable because of the extremely high imperishable cost that it was bought for. All men are like grass, and their glory is like flowers of the field. Grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord stands forever. The separation called for here is not negative. The separation called for here is the most beautiful separation ever. It is the separation of ourselves, of our souls, from malice, from deceit, from grass that withers, from flowers that fall. We are being separated from the perishable into the imperishable. We are being given an armor. We are being given a protection from the decay around us by God. We are being called into that. Into the idea of holiness is not that we appear some way on the outside just by the way that we look. It's not having a long white beard. Thank goodness. It's not having a long beard. It's not having a bunch of wrinkles. It's not having some kind of fancy robe. It's about our actions. It's about what we do. It is about following the way that Christ lived. Holiness is about living for the imperishable and casting away the perishable. If we are living towards the imperishable, if we are loving those around us, if we are caring for those around us, if we are living for what becomes beyond this life, we're reaching towards holiness. We are trying to be holy, holy. But every time that I decide to act out of selfish hypocrisy, if I decide to slander, if I decide to sin and to live for myself, I'm acting in a way that devalues the sacrifice that's been paid for by me. As we enter into this moment of communion, as we remember this immense sacrifice that's been paid for, as we recognize that we have been bought by something that can never be devalued, I pray that we act in a way that doesn't attempt to devalue that. I pray that we act in a way that shows the world around us that I've been bought. My life has been valued far higher than it deserves. That because of grace, I can reach towards something that there was not a chance I was ever going to attain earlier. And the great thing is that we can invite everyone else into that. This is not some kind of program that only some of us get to enter into. But I pray that the way that we live our lives allows others to see that guy's living for something that matters. That guy is reaching towards something that matters. Maybe I can be a part of that too. I pray that we focus on that as we enter into this time of communion now.